This is the Sony STR GX9 ES, and it's a very, very pretty machine. I personally love it. You know what I love about old hi-fi equipment? Well, there's a lot of things I like about old hi-fi equipment, but what I personally really like about old hi-fi equipment is the styling of it is gorgeous. The side of this thing is made out of this really beautiful wooden veneer. I don't even know what type of wood it's supposed to replicate, but it's very solid. It's not like a cheap piece of plastic junk that you find on like a Goodwill. I bought this thing for about $30 recently, and when I got it, it was really, really dusty on the inside. It's hard to tell right now, but this thing is disgusting on the inside. I had to take it apart and blow it out a little bit. I didn't get everything because a lot of it's on the bottom. It gets caught on different individual parts that are on the inside. But for the most part, it looks pretty good. I actually cleaned it a little bit. There's a couple of marks here at the bottom. Let's see if I can focus it. There we go. Little marks here at the bottom. A little bit of grime here along the face. There's a lot of grime along here, and especially underneath each of these things. This knob here turns beautifully, and when I play it, there's no static or anything, so the potentiometers are perfectly fine. This thing is a bit of a beast. It manages to pull off, I think, 130 watts per channel at 8 ohms, and I think 0.0015% harmonic distortion. Some crazy number like that. It's a giant beast of a machine. I think it weighs like 40 pounds. It's fabulous. It's got a bit hard to see, get in the light. It's got a speaker switch for, oh, it's out of focus. There we go. It's got A, B, A or B off if you want to use the headphone jack. It's got the IR sensor right here. It's got turnover. This is a really cool function. Basically, you can decide whether or not you want to change the bass response from 400 hertz down or 200 hertz down. That's cool if you want to fine tune things. You got the mid one right there. Treble has the same one. This one does it from 3 kilohertz and 6 kilohertz. These knobs have a very satisfying click every time you move it to a different position. Same with all these little knobs here. On the back, you can set it up for tape, digital audio tape, VH1, VH2, source. You can set it to stereo or mono. Ooh, look at my hand. The amount of overexposure on my hand right now is crazy. I'm basically like some type of angel. Amazing. Got the subsonic filter here. What the subsonic filter does is sometimes there's a little rumble on the vinyl that you use. Like if I were to use that record player right there, if I put a record onto it, there's a rumble associated with the frequencies below 20 hertz that your receiver can pick up, and your speakers can also play it. You're not going to hear it, but you're going to feel it, and it's going to be a little bit awkward. What this does is it helps to filter out a lot of those frequencies that you don't want in your music, because it's going to give it an unpleasant sound. Loudness switch. This, I don't even really know what this does, but this, when it's on, makes the music sound so much better. And I mean it, like this, I keep this on all the time. I don't see a point of turning it off, because without it on, the music just doesn't sound as good as if it were on. And then you got the standard, choose between moving magnet, moving coil, balance left and right. You got this muting here. So I had another receiver where it was a dual knob. So you have this one for adjusting the main volume, and then another knob in the back to fine tune the volume. This one just has this one volume knob here. It has a little muting switch here if you want to turn it down by 20 decibels. Adapter, not sure what that does, nor do I know what this one does either. Then you have the selectors between the different audio sources: CD, tuner, phono, tape, DAT, auxiliary, video 1, video 2, video 3, CDV. This is a Laserdisc. This is for recording also. This is the radio part of it. You have the tune mode, FM level, sense, mute mode, FM, AM, plus or minus presets. You can control it, I think, goes up to about 100 in the memory. I can't remember. Let's turn it on. One of the things I love about this machine, very satisfying to turn on. Oh, it's fantastic, right? Oh, you hear that click? It's just, and then, yes, perfect. Has a lot of, it's very simple. Looking at all the lights, there's not like lights galore compared to a lot of other receivers of the time, or even on a lot of vintage receivers. Because like when you think of like 70s receivers or 80s receivers, I think of, it's got digital VU meters everywhere. There's a whole bunch of like LEDs along the top or LEDs along the bottom. It's just all over the place. This is nice. This is just really simple. It's got a light here showing you where the light indicator is going. It's got the low light here indicating what the source is playing from. There we go. Let's focus up on that bit. I'm going to set it to tuner. The radio on this thing isn't the nicest one. I had a Yamaha receiver that allowed you to fine tune up to 0.01 megahertz. And that was fantastic because then I can get the signal just right. This only goes up by increments of 0.1, so it's not as nice as the Yamaha. But for the most part, this is perfectly suitable. I will say though that the signal is weak. I don't know if it's just positioning of this receiver in the house, if the signal, like the antenna in the back isn't particularly good. I might want to try and upgrade it just to see what happens. But every time I try to adjust the signal on this thing, it's not giving me the clearest sound out of it. And this is a pretty good indicator, but I feel like even though it says like this is low signal, I still get a pretty clean sound. I said before that this thing is rated at 130 watts per channel. These speakers are rated at, I believe, 130 watts as well. I don't even need to turn this knob very high for it to get super loud. I'll show you. This room is also pretty like echoey, so it's not the perfect room to be putting speakers in, but it does what I needed to do at least. Let's turn it up just a little bit. I have this connected, right? Oh, I'm stupid. I forgot to set it to A. Let me tune it a bit. Here's muting function. Here's the muting function. My bad. Does a pretty good job at that. Here's without. Here's with loudness disabled. It takes a lot of the life out of the music if you're listening to it. I don't know if it comes across clearly while recording, but for sure while I'm standing in this room, there's a lot of life taken out of the music whenever I take the loudness function off. The sound just has a much more fuller sound to it whenever I leave it on, which is why I prefer having it. Powerful little machine. I mean, it's not little, obviously. This thing is huge. It's so fucking big. Oh my god. This thing also gets really, really hot. I mean, oh my god, it's so hot. There's a giant heat sink inside. It's a little bit hard to see it. It's not like the most amazing heat sink I've ever seen, but it does the job. This thing gets toasty, like really, really toasty. You leave it on for a couple hours, this entire thing, scorching hot. You can't even touch this part because this part gets really, really hot. Power supply takes a while for it to get hot. Like right now, I put my hand over it. It's very cool. Over time, though, it's going to be, ooh, toasty, toasty. Same with this thing. Oh, but everything inside there is very beautiful. On the front, you're going to notice something. It says spontaneous twin drive. I'll focus again. Spontaneous twin drive. What that means is it's Sony's proprietary power supply thing. The idea behind it was that when there wasn't enough power being supplied to your speakers, it worked as a Class A amplifier. But when there's a whole bunch of power going to your speakers, it'd work as a Class B. And the idea would be it would switch between the two without changing the sound that you're receiving from your speakers. So it kind of elegantly switch between the two and you wouldn't even notice. I never had a situation where I could really test that out to see if that's true. Because I never really moved this position past like, what is that? The 9 o'clock position? I see no point. It's just way too powerful to even really move it past there at all. Like, I'm never gonna have a situation where it's gonna be in the 12 o'clock position. I'm gonna demonstrate the stereo function now. Because even though it's on stereo right now, radio only does it in mono. Ooh. So I'm gonna switch to CD. I believe I still have this connector. Or not connector, this connected. Yeah, that's this Sony PS1. This isn't the audiophile like one. This is actually the PS7001, I believe. Uses this digital thing. A lot of people say you need to get the 1000X, but you don't really need that one in particular. This is also a good model. It uses the same DAC. The main difference is that it doesn't have the RCA in the back. Should technically be better. There's a fantastic website, I'll put it in the description, where someone actually measures it and is able to explain why this one should be technically better. It also explains why this thing is coveted as an audio device for CD playing. I plan on getting a different CD player though, but for now this works just fine. I believe I have it set up, put it up nice and loud. What's beautiful about the PS1, right, is that when you turn it on, it makes this wonderful, wonderful synth explosion. It's the most incredible sound. It's like how when you go to the movies, you have THX, it goes. This thing makes that similar sound, but Sony's own version of that to demonstrate the capabilities of the machine. It sounds gorgeous. I also forgot where the controller is, so I can't play any music with this thing. Makes me a little bit sad, but just turning this thing on should be enough. Before I do that, though, I just want to. Oh my god, this is the most satisfying aspect of the PS1. Oh, and I click there. This is clicking the open, having this lid open right here. Oh, it's so satisfying. And then it glides open, and then I can do this for a while because this is really satisfying to do. But anyway, I believe I have it set on CD. Okay, I do. Should be plugged in. Yeah, it is. So if we do this, I'll step back for a bit so that way you'll be able to hear everything properly. Oh yeah, there we go. I'm gonna do that again because it needs to be louder. So I'm gonna set the volume up just a bit louder. Yeah, seems good. One more time. Touching upon these speakers real quick. They got a pretty solid bass. The construction of these speakers is amazing. I found them for $30 at a store. I don't even know anything about these speakers really outside of what it says on the back. I can't find any information on it online except for the fact that it's made by Yamaha. They're rated at 130 watts. And what's it called? They're 8-ohm speakers. And my assumption is they were made in, when I first got them, I thought they were made in the 70s, but I think they're made in the 80s. I do know they're made in America though, which I found very interesting considering that Yamaha is a Japanese company. Solid speakers though. These things are pretty solid. Let's go back to radio. Left and right. This isn't going to matter unless I put a record on, and I'm not going to put a record on because for some reason this turntable right there, the right RCA cable seems to be broken, so I got to replace it. Let's do the turnover actually. I'm gonna set it up a little bit higher. Can't really tell with this music by adjusting the treble. Definitely with mids though. Now we're on to bass. This thing is a very beautiful machine. You know what really throws me off though? This isn't the top of the line from this series of Sony receivers. This was made in, I think, 1989. It's one of the last pure analog receivers that Sony made. The top of the line is the STR GX10 ES. This is the 9 ES. What's the difference? Not a whole lot. I believe the 10 ES is rated for 150 watts per channel. They look exactly the same. Everything about this is exactly the same. It's just the 150 watts from the 10 ES compared to this one. It's just 130. But at that point, you're kind of getting diminishing returns, right? I mean, what's the difference between 130 watts and 150 watts, really? There's not too big a difference there. I mean, if you had like a 20 watt receiver and you compare that to like a 40 watt receiver, then I get it, right? But this is perfectly fine for me. This is going to be perfectly fine for everyone. One of the drawbacks from this is that because it's so old, it doesn't have capability to support 5.1 speaker setups. Oh, that's blurry. Wow, look at that. Let me try and focus. There we go. So this is a pure stereo machine. Sports up to 4 speakers. Can't do a 5.1 setup. So if I were to ever upgrade this setup right here to something a little bit more high end, I want to go for something that does surround sound. The receiver in particular that I had in my mind was a Yamaha receiver called a DSP A3090. That thing only does 80 watts per channel, but it does 5.1, and that thing is a monster. That's a monster of a machine. When you look at it, and it's oh my goodness, that thing's incredible. Or something even more modern than that, but I don't really care for a lot of the modern features that they put into receivers. Like, I don't care for Wi-Fi, don't care for Bluetooth. HDMI, that'd be pretty cool, I guess, but I don't need my receiver to do that. I just want my receiver to handle audio. Something else can handle video qualities. This is a beautiful machine. Like, it's gorgeous. It does get really hot though. That's my main complaint. This thing gets ferociously hot. Last night I left it on and I would just turn the music on occasionally. And this room, this entire room, you can't really see it. There we go. This entire room just gets disgustingly hot, like disgustingly hot, while this thing is on. And I know it's from this thing because I would put my hand over it and all the heat, this is the point where all the heat was coming from. It was just enormous amount of heat that was radiating off this thing. Let me talk about a couple other things that I dislike about this thing. This lid refuses to come off. You can see a couple of the markings I had on here when I was trying to open this stupid machine up. I had to shove some things in there and just pry it open. This thing was stuck. And once I got it off, I finally figured out what it was. This part right here, which is just ever so slightly dented inward. You can't even notice it right now. It looks perfectly straight, but it's just ever so slightly dented in, and as a result, this thing was getting stuck on this piece here on both sides. And so whenever I would push it off, the end would slide. I can lift up the back, but it just refused to come off. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out what was causing it, because it looked like it was ready to come off. It was ready to come off, but it didn't come off. It was the most annoying thing I've ever seen. Why don't you come off? Oh my God. And then I finally did get it off. And all I did once I was putting it all back together, the reason why I took it apart was because I thought I destroyed this thing actually, or at least I thought I destroyed the right channel until I figured out that it wasn't the receiver's fault. It was actually the turntable's fault. I was pretty scared for a while though because I smelled like something was hot, but it was just the receiver being hot in general. And I thought I burned a component, so I was just like, what piece did I burn this time? Because I've broken quite a few things before. Just from experimenting with different pieces of hardware that I have around the house, or me trying to fix some stuff. I broke a pair of speakers once trying to repair a receiver. I turned it on, and the fuse got blown, and then the speakers make a loud noise. I turned it on, it's just like, and then the speakers are broken. Now every time I turn on the speakers, it just make a ringing, horrible ringing sound. And that's because I destroyed them trying to test out this one receiver that I had from the 70s. But anyway, that's a different story for a different day. I'm gonna pull this out a little bit actually so we can take a look at the back. I don't know if the quality of this veneer is coming out in this video, but it's really pretty. Like I was looking at it right now. I was just like, wow, this thing, I really want to polish it, give it a nice mirror finish. There's a couple scratches on here. The guy that I bought it from had it in storage apparently. So I was looking inside, and storage explains so much because it's filthy, and then there was just all sorts of like dust and fingerprints on there. It's just grimy and yucky, and it's terrible. It's gonna be a little bit hard. Let's see if I can pull this out. No, I'm not doing this. Okay, I'm gonna pause it real quick while I move this out so we can take a look at the back of the receiver. Here's the back of the receiver. Pretty simple. It doesn't look, it's not fancy or anything. I know with a lot of high-end receivers, they try to make, oh, this is getting hot now. It's not like but it's like, yeah, that's toasty. That's really toasty. This would be a great piece of machinery to keep on during the winter times because you just keep your house warm. Just so much heat radiates off from this thing. Even when it's not doing anything, it's just hot. It's just hot. Makes no sense. Why is this thing so hot? Because it's spicy. Ooh. The connections on the back, what I was trying to get to was that with a lot of high-end equipment, when I think of receivers, they try to make the back look really nice. Like these things are black or gold-plated, and then it's just really nice to look at. But this thing it's just pretty standard. It's gotten all the markings. This was made in, I think I mentioned it earlier, it was made in '89, so it's got S-Video out. So they didn't have DVD players yet. They made DVD players in 1997. So this was pre-DVD. VHS was still the top of the line thing. I assume since this is a Sony, they wanted you to use Betamax. No one's going to use Betamax though, especially nowadays. This thing is very beautiful sounding. Very beautiful sounding. I'm legitimately impressed at the quality of the sound. It's very neutral. I like neutral equipment because then you can just EQ it to whatever sound you want. When I try to make my, I guess you could call it my hi-fi setup, I think of neutrality in mind, so that way everything is just kind of giving me the sound of the music itself without any sort of coloring. This thing does a very good job at that. That PlayStation kind of colors it a little bit with that warm analog sound, even though it's like weirdly digital. This thing is purely analog though, so you're gonna get like that authentic analog sound. It's a very wonderful piece of machinery. It's very impressive. For $30, not too bad. Even the internal components, like this power supply here, this giant transformer, it's very beautiful. Like it's very aesthetic. It's very hi-fi, futuristic. I like it. As I was saying, for $30, hell yeah. This is gonna last me for a long time. Can't wait to finish my hi-fi setup. I'm trying to get everything done at the moment. This is gonna last me for a while though. Hopefully I don't break it. I need to get another receiver to act as a testing machine, so that way I don't have to use the one that I use personally to test out different things. I think what I said earlier was I was surprised no one made a video about this. There's like 2 videos about the GX10 ES, but no videos about the GX9 ES, even though you could probably get this for cheaper and it will probably be the same thing as the 10 ES, but arguably better because it'd be cheaper. Probably a couple more out there as well. Probably in good condition. This thing is in remarkable condition considering its age and the fact that there's so much crap on the inside of that. You can't see it unless I tear it apart, but it's a gorgeous machine. I like the black facing with the wood highlights. Highlights? Is that the word that I should be using to describe this? The wood trim on the side. I love wood on electronics. I think it just looks so aesthetic. I think it looks great. Every time I want to buy a piece of equipment, I like to think of the look of it as well, because I think that kind of plays a bit into the experience of using it. With audio equipment, it's not just about the sound, right? A lot of equipment is going to get you that really solid, good sound. And then the difference between this thing that sounds really good and this thing that sounds really good is just how does it look at that point? Because if they both sound equally as good, the one with the better looks is going to be the winner of them all. And this thing has very solid looks. It doesn't have the silver face. It's purely black. But that nice, like, dark wood trim on the sides, ooh, completes the aesthetic. Makes it nice. Complements these wooden speakers right here as well. Gorgeous piece of machinery. If you ever find it online for cheap, totally recommend getting it. You're gonna really enjoy it. Maybe the heat will be a problem. I think I saw someone on the forum mentioning how they probably could wire it a bit differently and that would reduce the heat a lot. But for my purposes, I'm just gonna turn it off whenever I'm not gonna use it, so the heat isn't gonna be too big of an issue. But that's my video for this. This is my contribution to the internet. Me talking about and making a video about this wonderful little hi-fi equipment from the 80s. Hope you all have a fabulous day.